Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I have another video for you guys from Swagkage. This one explaining probably one of the most broken abilities in the Naruto series, Kamui. Now, Kamui, of course, is an ability exclusive to those who possess the Sharingan of one Obito Uchiha. So only characters like Obito and Kakashi could use it. Obviously, Obito because he's the one who has the Sharingan, and Kakashi because he was given the Sharingan from Obito right before the moment that Kakashi thought that he was dead. Before that moment that he thought Obito was dead, but then, of course, another person was able to use Kamui, that being one Madara Uchiha, because he was able to take the Sharingan from Kakashi, which is a moment that I still am not a fan of. But anyway, let's go ahead and watch this video from Swag, and he can explain to us and everyone watching who may not fully understand what Kamui actually is, what it could do. So let's go ahead and watch the video.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Swagkage here, and welcome to today's video, where we're going to be talking about Kamui, a space-time ninjutsu tied to the Mangekyo Sharingan of Obito Uchiha. Like many Mangekyo Sharingan powers, Kamui is really strong, and also like many Mangekyo Sharingan powers, its name is rooted in Japanese folklore. It's not directly named after a Shinto god like Tsukuyomi, Amaterasu, Kagetsuchi, and abilities like them, but it instead refers to the power and authority of the Shinto gods as a whole. As a matter of fact, when translated into English, Kamui literally means authority of the gods. So with a name like that, one might be led to believe that Kamui is really powerful, and rightfully so, because it is. It's one of the most useful and versatile ninjutsu in the entire series, though I guess that's to be expected since it's a Mangekyo Sharingan power. Even when taking that into account, though, I think Kamui is one of the best abilities granted by the Mangekyo Sharingan, at least out of the ones we've seen so far, especially when both of its variants are used in conjunction with one another. But I digress, I'm getting way ahead of myself, so let me get to actually explaining how the technique works. So Obito's Mangekyo Sharingan are unique, at least in the sense that they both give him access to the same ability, the same way both of Shisui's Mangekyo Sharingan give him access to Kodo Amatsu Kami, but the abilities are distinctly different and inexplicably linked together the same way Sasuke's Amaterasu and Kagetsuchi are.
Also, I just want to point something out, since thankfully enough he brought up Sasuke. I do just want to point something out that I noticed in the Boruto era. Now, this is actually a big plot hole, and I'm actually surprised that more people didn't point this out. And I think I actually did point out in my review of one of the Boruto chapters. So in the Boruto era, we see Sasuke using his right eye to cast Amaterasu, but that's actually not how it works. You see, the way it works is that Sasuke's left eye can cast Amaterasu, and his right eye gives him flame control, which gives him access to the Amaterasu flames. So yeah, again, I keep seeing this, and I'm actually more and more shocked that more people aren't pointing this out. And it's especially concerning because, again, sorry, this is a bit of a spoiler for the Boruto manga if you haven't read it, but considering that Sasuke's left eye got stabbed out, it's even more, you find out just how crippled Sasuke is in power, because not only did he lose the Rinnegan, he also technically lost his ability to cast Amaterasu, because again, it's his left eye that allows him to cast Amaterasu, not his right eye. And yet, for some reason, we saw Sasuke casting Amaterasu with his right eye not once but twice. And to me, I'm always wondering, like, is no one pointing this out? Did Kishimoto just forget that that's not how Sasuke's ability works? Just wanted to point that out, sorry.
Kagetsuchi are. Both of these eyes allow their owner to access an unnamed pocket dimension, typically referred to as the Kamui dimension, though each one goes about doing this in one of two completely different ways. Now, while each eye is intended to be used for different purposes, they both have very similar applications. They are both ocular jutsu that involve the manipulation of space, and as an ocular jutsu, the space Kamui seeks to manipulate is always somewhere within the user's visual focal point, at least to some extent. Obito's left eye allows him to project a portal to his pocket dimension out into space, specifically directed at the focal point of his vision. In other words, this allows him to use a long-range version of Kamui, and its general purpose is to teleport people, objects, and other targets into the dimension using these long-range portals. Meanwhile, his right eye allows him to create a portal to this pocket dimension centered at its own position, as in the position of his right eye itself. It's almost like the eye becomes a door to the dimension. In other words, this allows him to cast a short-range version of Kamui, and just like the portals created by his left eye, this portal portal can teleport people and objects into the dimension for whatever reason he sees fit. That's the quick version of it anyway. The mechanics of this jutsu are quite a bit more complicated than that. Getting into the specifics of this ability is really tricky. Let me start with the details of the left eye's ability, since it's a bit less complicated than the right eye. As I mentioned earlier, Obito's left Mangekyo Sharingan allows him to project portals to Kamui's dimension forward into space and usually centered around the focal point of his vision. The reason there's more to the left eye's abilities than meets the eye is its owner can control the shape and size of the portals they create, and they can also choose how long these portals remain tangible. Doing so requires training, of course, as Kakashi had pretty much no control over any of these things when he first used it against Deidara. Furthermore, this portal acts sort of like a black hole, as it draws everything near it towards its center, and kind of forcibly drags its targets into Kamui's dimension, as opposed to just letting them fall into it. Also, the portals created by the left eye do not always seek to teleport the entirety of their targets. Kakashi and Obito can use this to their advantage by sucking pieces of an opponent's body into Kamui's dimension, like when Kakashi completely tore off Deidara's arm with this ability, or when he used it to effectively destroy half of the Ghetto statue. And speaking of the Ghetto statue, the fact that Kakashi was able to teleport half of it into Kamui's dimension practically confirmed that he has full control over the size of the portals he creates, like I mentioned earlier. This, of course, allows him to transport a wide variety.
And you know, again, when it's interesting because whenever someone explains this, or whenever someone points these things out, it actually makes you realize just how insane, or at the very least insanely useful, this ability actually is. Because imagine if someone who had Kamui, if you were fighting someone, he could just focus the black hole, let's say, on their heart, and then boom, it's a one-shot insta-kill. Like, that's how insanely useful. And unless you're someone who's like faster than who can move at faster than light speeds, you're pretty much done. Again, that's how insane this ability is. Unless you're like, let's say for example, the Raikage or Naruto in his KCM mode, or a Ten Tails Jinchuriki, you're not surviving this. And again, I feel like the only thing that keeps Kakashi from constantly using it is because, as we've seen, whenever he uses it, it severely uses up a ton of chakra, and it results in him ending up in the hospital. And then at one point he used it too much, and it literally killed him, in the fight against pain. So again, that goes into what I've mentioned before in one of these videos whenever I discuss whether I'm discussing Naruto or Boruto. Kishimoto does have this tendency to give characters these incredibly overpowered abilities, but always gives them weaknesses and always gives reasons as to why they don't just use it so often. For example, Kakashi with Kamui, if he uses it too much, he ends up in the hospital or dead. And of course, in general, with the Mangekyo Sharingan, you use it too much, you lose your sight. And even with the EMS, while it circumvents that weakness, it's also still a Sharingan ability, which is specifically stated to be an ability that severely drains a person's stamina and still requires a lot of chakra to be able to use. I mean, the only reason why characters like Madara and Sasuke are capable of using Sharingan abilities for longer than what's typically known for a member of the Uchiha clan is because they were born with more than the normal amount of chakra for a member of the Uchiha clan, and that's why they're capable of doing all of these insane things. Now, you could attribute that to them being reincarnates of Indra, but personally, I don't think that's the case. If I'm being honest, I think that they were just two people who were born, like these generational prodigies with insane advantages from birth.
Variety of things in the Kamui's dimension, ranging anywhere from something as small as a kunai knife to something as large as the entire Eight Tails. While this form of Kamui can be used defensively, it is best used offensively, and can even be considered an instant kill move, since Obito and Kakashi by extension could use this left eye to hypothetically snipe off a person's head by teleporting it into Kamui's dimension, the same way Kakashi teleported Deidara's arm there. Oh yeah, also one final note is Obito's left eye can also eject things that it's teleported into into Kamui's dimension, like when Kakashi ejected Gyuki's entire body, though the portal that the person or object is emerging from needs to be created at a range, like all of the Left Eye's portals do. Also, Madara seems to be capable of using the Left Eye to teleport himself into Kamui's dimension, despite the fact that that should be a Right Eye exclusive ability, but whatever. Anyways, speaking of, now I think it's about time I move on to the specifics of the Right Eye.
Speaking of the plot inconsistencies, I would like to remind people, look at how Kakashi was able to basically, again, keep in mind, Kakashi, we've seen him multiple times use the left eye to eject things from the Kamui dimension, even though, like Swag said, that should be a right eye exclusive ability. So Kakashi here should not have been able to take B into the Kamui dimension. Well, he should have been able to do that, but he also shouldn't have been able to eject him and then later on himself from the Kamui dimension, because that's not how it works. That's a right eye exclusive ability. And yet again, this plays into one of the reasons why a lot of people have problems with the War Arc, is because there's so many plot inconsistencies, like things like this that just don't line up with what Kishimoto already set up in the world. So anyway, let's move forward.
Feel more complicated. So while the abilities of the right eye might sound inferior to the abilities of the left on paper, this one arguably provides better abilities than the left does. Short-range teleportation might not seem as useful as long-range teleportation, but Obito can accomplish a whole bunch of really creative and unorthodox things with it. For starters, at least initially anyway, while Kakashi was unable to teleport himself into Kamui's dimension, Obito could. And while I guess that's not a huge advantage anymore now that Madara showed that it is possible to use the left eye to teleport oneself into Kamui's dimension, I do think it's worth keeping in mind because that might have been a plot hole. Regardless, even if the left eye is capable of teleporting its user into Kamui's dimension, it can't do so with the same level of finesse that the right eye can. Obito is capable of using his right eye to teleport pieces of his body into Kamui's dimension. But, unlike what happens when he teleports a piece of somebody else's body into Kamui's dimension with the left eye, when Obito teleports pieces of his own body, they will remain intact after he returns them. By storing pieces of himself in Kamui's dimension this way, he is able to make either parts of his body or his entire body, if he chooses to, intangible. Of course, intangibility allows Obito to phase through solid matter, which makes him practically invincible when Kamui is active. When using Kamui this way, Obito does have a few weaknesses, but they're pretty easy to cover, so doing any sort of damage to somebody with Obito's right Mangekyo Sharingan is borderline impossible. The first of these weaknesses is that he can only remain intangible for 5 minutes continuously. This isn't too much of a problem, since there aren't a whole lot of situations where Obito will need to stay intangible for 5 minutes at a time, and more often than not, he can just phase through objects before materializing again and calling on the effects of Kamui when needed. But in rare instances, it is possible to use really excessive amounts of force to exploit this weakness, such as when Konan set up a literal ocean of paper bombs meant to detonate for 10 minutes straight. The second of these weaknesses is that Obito can only attack targets while he's materialized. Since he can switch between tangibility and intangibility very quickly, it's very hard to capitalize on this weakness, but for somebody incredibly fast, like the 3rd or 4th Raikage, or somebody with the Flying Thunder God technique like Minato Namikaze, it is possible to damage Obito during the split second that he is materialized. The last of these weaknesses is incredibly situational and practically non-existent as a result of that. When Obito and Kakashi fought in the 4th Great Ninja War, Kakashi discovered that their eyes were connected to the same time-space, and also realized that while Obito stores parts of his body in the Kamui dimension, Kakashi can teleport weapons like kunai, or even entire people like Naruto to that dimension to damage Obito while he's there. This pretty much completely nullifies Obito's ability to phase through matter. But again, it's incredibly situational since it only applies when Obito is fighting Kakashi. Anyway, Obito's right eye does give him access to quite a few other abilities. For example, as he can do with his left eye, Obito can eject people and objects that he's teleported into Kamui's dimension with his right eye, though in this case it is done at close range, making this application quite a bit easier to use and quite a bit more versatile as well. It also seems to require less focus to do this with his right eye, though that may be due in part to the fact that the only person to ever do it with Obito's left eye was Kakashi, and Kakashi was using a transplanted Sharingan as a non-Uchiha, which comes with a whole lot of negative side effects, so I can't say for sure. Anyway, Obito can also very easily teleport both himself and other people into Kamui's dimension with his right eye, and can also choose to eject himself at any point in the outside world, allowing him to effectively teleport. He can teleport himself, other people, other objects, you name it. Though it is worth worth pointing out that if he's transporting something other than himself, he needs to be making direct contact with it. And it's also stated that it's impossible to trace his chakra or the chakra of anybody he's transporting with him when he teleports this way. Minato even says that this is a more potent space-time ninjutsu than the Flying Thunder God technique. And that's like the teleportation jutsu, so that's gotta mean something. Now, when both eyes are working in conjunction with one another, they're capable of some pretty crazy stuff. Not only are they capable of teleporting targets twice as fast when they're both focused on one thing at the same time, like as in fast enough to outspeed a truth-seeking orb, but additionally, somebody with both of Obito's Mangekyo Sharingan can create 2 portals to Kamui's dimension and connect them. These 2 portals can be further used in conjunction with another space-time ninjutsu, like Kaguya's Yamotsu Hirasaka ability. Obito was able to connect the portals created by his left eye with one of the portals Kaguya was creating to another one of her dimensions, and use the portal created by his right eye to teleport through that portal. It's a bit confusing to explain verbally, but if you read the fight with Kaguya, you'll see what I mean. Synchronizing with another space-time is very taxing on a user of Kamui, as it pretty much sapped Obito of all of the chakra he had left when he attempted to do it. And this brings me to Kamui's chakra cost, along with the risk of blindness associated with it. Obito's repeated use of Kamui had—
Wait, hold on, we gotta read that. Let's see here, where is it?
with it.
Oh, Jesus Christ, hold on. Come on, let me see if I can get it. Okay, here we go. I forgot to mention dual Kamui with 6 pass chakra lets a person use a perfect Susanoo with Kamui shuriken that warp whatever they hit to the dimension on impact. Sorry. Okay, so you just forgot to mention the Susanoo and everything. It's fine.
Obito's
like we all make mistakes.
Repeated use of Kamui has had no negative impact on his eyesight whatsoever. The only time his eyes have ever started to bleed were immediately after he first used Kamui in the battle against all—
Well, I mean, is that technically his own blood, or is it someone else's blood? Because, you know, he had a ton of blood raining down on him from, you know, the corpses. So, I don't know. Yeah, the whole thing about his eye never, you know, deteriorating, excuse me, just like every other Mangekyo Sharingan user, that to me, honestly, it never made any sense. And now again, you could technically say that maybe the, you know, the Hashirama cells that he had in his body was sort of healing that, but honestly, again, it was never properly explained. So technically that still remains headcanon and not an actual explanation for why Obito never lost his eyesight. I don't know. I mean, to me, it's just something that never made sense. I guess it's just, we have to accept the fact that it's a plot hole on Kishimoto's part
that he massacred, and when he used Kamui in synchronization with Yomotsu Hirasaka. That's it. Obito has never once shown any sign of blindness or impaired vision, and while Kakashi initially showed signs of fatigue after using Kamui, I mean, heck, he was stuck in the hospital for like an entire month after using Kamui on Deidara a couple times. Through training, he was able to increase the amount of times he can use Kamui per day, though I'm not sure about the blindness. He did state during the war that he was getting close to going blind, though he used it way too many times for me to believe he shouldn't have been blind by that point already. He was given chakra from Kurama, so that might have had something to do with it, but I'm not entirely sure.
I don't know. I mean, to me, that just seems a little bit weird. Yeah, someone in the comments of one of my previous videos did mention this, that Kakashi stated that he was starting to lose sight in his left eye, but yeah, I'm sorry, I don't buy this. I agree with Swag. Considering the fact that Sasuke started losing his sight pretty quickly when you think about, or pretty close to when he first awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan. He used it a few times and it was already starting to experience blindness, and yet I'm supposed to believe that someone who's had the Mangekyo Sharingan since he was like, what, 13? He was like 13 when he had the Mangekyo Sharingan and probably used it a bunch of times since, and yet only just now, like over 25 years later, is only just starting to lose sight in his left eye. Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I don't buy that. I don't buy it at all. This is this is just another thing we have to accept as just being a mistake on Kishimoto's part.
Entirely sure. A lot of people attribute Obito's resistance to the ill effects of his Mangekyo Sharingan to the fact that he has Hashirama cells. And I guess I can buy that. I'm not entirely sure why that would have an effect on how much chakra Kamui would cost, since Obito has never once said anything that implies that Kamui was about to cause him to run out of chakra. But, I mean, whatever. Anyways, as for Kakashi, I cannot think of a similar justification, because I know for a fact he does not have the cells of Hashirama Senju. But, I mean, whatever. It doesn't matter.
The whole thing about the chakra thing and how it doesn't really make any sense. Like, okay, Obito has Hashirama cells, which we know according to the lore of this world. If you draft Hashirama Senju's cells onto your body, you gain a shit ton of benefits. Like, for example, his regeneration ability, the insane increase to the chakra pool that you already have, and not to mention it makes you physically stronger than you already are. So, again, it's like the whole thing about, so Obito later on when he says that, you know, Kamui uses up a lot of chakra, doesn't really make a lot of sense, because he should have already circumvented that weakness by having Hashirama Senju's cells grafted onto his body. And then, not to mention, later on all of his abilities got enhanced by when he became the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, and basically his body has been enhanced by Six Paths chakra, which should have again eliminated that weakness completely, and yet we still hear about it. Again, yeah, I'm sorry, the whole chakra thing just, it doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry.
That sort of stuff is all really up in the air, and it's kind of up to headcanon, so yeah, I'm gonna just not. So yeah, that's gonna do it for today's video. Hate to end it so abruptly, but there's really nowhere to go from here on the subject of Kamui. Regardless, I think it's really cool, and I'm glad I finally got to talk about it, because I've been meaning to for a while. A lot of you guys have requested it, so thank you. Kamui's really cool. I had a lot of fun making this video. But anyways, yeah, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like button. If you have any ideas for future video topics you want me to cover, leave them in the comments below, and I'll get to any of them that I like at some point in the future anyway. I have a huge backlog of videos I already need to do, but whatever, that's neither here nor there. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of the day, and I do hope to see you in my next video. Till then, talk to you later. Swagkage out. Bye.
Okay, so that was the video, and yeah, Kamui, like he said, it's pretty freaking broken when you think about it. And unless you're, like I said, unless you're, let's say, the Raikage or Minato or Sasuke and Naruto in the war arc after getting their Six Paths power-ups, unless you're a Ten Tails Jinchuriki, it's insane what Kamui allows you to do. And hell, Kamui is so freaking broken that Kishimoto even came up with some out of nowhere excuse of, you know, now that he's the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, he can't use Kamui anymore, which to me made no goddamn sense. It's like, wait, how does that make sense? And to me, you can't help but wonder if Kishimoto realized, okay, hold on a minute, he's the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, he has the Rinnegan, and he has Kamui. Yeah, no, one of these things has got to go. And hell, we barely even saw him use the freaking Rinnegan abilities other than to control the tailed beasts and use the Six Paths of Pain, ability. But other than that, we never really saw him use any of the other Rinnegan abilities, which is, again, kind of insane, because some of the Rinnegan abilities, when you think about them, are pretty hacks, especially if they're in the hands of like a Six Paths level character. It's insane what they can do. So anyway, guys, that's all I have for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, as always. Hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you soon.